In a world of pro wrestling podcasts, this is certainly one of the newest. Thomas S.K. Green and the rest of the gang on Whacked Out Wrestling. Hello, everybody. This is Whacked Out Wrestling. I am, of course, the host, Thomas S.K. Green, and with me, as always, is John Roche, and our third man, Joey the Caveman, is having some medical issues with his family, and we wish his mother the best of luck on this one. So hopefully he will be back soon.
Hello?
Oh. Yep. Oh, I was waiting for you to say something, so.
Oh, no, I didn't really have anything to say.
Okay, then let's go back and get right to the big news on the day on this one, in that we at long last have finally seen Whacked Out Wrestling exist in real life. And also there was some other pay-per-view events or something like that. So there's multiple bonuses there.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And it's always a bit of a weird thing that they actually run indie shows on the same day as Hell in a Cell. Like, you try to get people outside of them, but today was actually a pretty good example for it, just locally at least. So props to Beyond Wrestling, and props to the Feast Sandwich Shop for getting a free show today. Check it out on powerbomb.tv. But the most important thing, of course, this week was Hell in a Cell. It was one of the biggest events since 1998 when Undertaker threw Mankind off Hell in a Cell and he plummeted 15 feet through an announce table. But for the most part, we've seen this one, and now we had those plans for an event with one of the deadliest structures in pro wrestling today, that also happened to be setting things up for 2 or 3 different pay-per-views.
What structure is that?
Hell in a Cell.
Ah, okay.
Which is a good preview for a super show in Australia, and Evolution, and probably also the Saudi Arabia show, and other things that make this basically just a show with a couple matches in a cage. And that's not a good thing, because Hell in a Cell has an aura among itself. If you're in a Hell in a Cell match, it should be something big, not just, oh, it's September, let's throw in a cell.
Yeah, it would be like if if WCW did something where they just stuck random groups in war games.
You mean like they did by the end?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the big problems on it for the most part, where Vince Russo basically killed stuff. Heck, he nearly killed Hell in a Cell. He put it on Raw once for it, so that's always a problem as well.
He put Hell in a Cell on Raw. That must have been a fairly obscure one, because
yeah, it was on the Hell in a Cell DVD set. So
okay.
Yeah, wasn't that bad, except it was, on Raw. So
well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You don't want to, like, WCW would sometimes get flack for giving away title changes on live TV, but this is sort of the same thing, except probably even more pointless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's certain things that you want to be able to handle for it, and that was basically the biggest issue, where some things just need to be special. So
yeah, and even a title change on free TV, I can sort of see some form of justification for that. Like, maybe if you want to show that it sort of gives that whole anything could happen or anyone could be the champ type aura. But doing a big blow-off feud type match on free TV is just completely pointless.
Yeah. And that's really the problem where tying into WCW versus WWE right now is the issue, because WCW's problem was that it seemed like anybody could be the champion. WWE's problem is that it seems like there's only about 4 people who can win any title, and they're going to win every single title. And the answer is basically somewhere in the middle. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a title just be a mid-card title or just be for certain divisions on it. And it's not like everybody on the roster should have one. Yes, if everybody's special, nobody's special. But at the same time, that's what you have mid-card titles for. Not just as a, oh, we can't give you the world title because this guy's got it, so keep this as a sidekick and beat up all these jobbers.
Hey, it worked for Randy Savage.
Yeah. But that was also because anything would work for Randy Savage, so.
That is true.
Yeah. And there is some problems on this one where it just goes to the point where everything in it seems like it has all the problems in 98, where the undercard means nothing. The whole show seems like it's gotten into a caste system, and if you make enough money, you get into a higher caste, and if you don't, you're nothing.
Are we sure they don't still have Vince Russo around?
Honestly, the problem is that Vince Russo, if they had Russo around, it might actually be better right now, because say what you want about Vince Russo, but a Vince Russo show had everybody on the show matter. Everybody had a gimmick and had something to do, whether it was good, bad, or otherwise. And a lot of times it was bad or otherwise. They were doing something. And right now it just seems like it's basically they only care about the top guys on the show. And if you give the lower card and the mid card something to do, they'll give you more leeway for the main event guy. It says something that John Cena and Roman Reigns are names are mud in the internet wrestling community, and that also tied to when they decided, nope, we don't have to work on the lower mid card anymore. Just go after the main event. And that's usually a big issue for it, because if you're doing stuff, you don't need to have that stuff. Like, for instance, if you're a Jack Swagger fan in 2014, you didn't need to see him win things, beat Brock Lesnar, and win at the world title at WrestleMania as pyro and confetti go down, Cole and Graves crying tears of joy as boyhood dream finally came true. You just settle for, I just want to see this dude beat Rusev.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think he's actually in Lucha Underground now, or at least he will be soon.
He is right now, so, and that's usually a good plus on it, because it's actually weird they got him in Lucha Underground, because Swagger just seemed like that guy who was tailor-made to be a gaijin heel in Japan.
Oh, absolutely. Well, he could be what the equivalent would be in Lucha Underground if they. Nah.
No, I think it's viable, because Sam Adonis is doing such good work in Mexico, basically on, he's a wrestler who's a Trump supporter, and given his late work with Zeb Coulter in WWE, Swagger could absolutely play that role. It wouldn't be good, but he could do that, and there's a place for it, so fair enough.
Yeah, it just seems like the sort of thing when you're doing a very in-the-moment gimmick. I mean, it's not going to age particularly well.
Mm-hmm. Well, it all depends on how you do it, and do it for most of those things, because if you do it well, there's a difference between, say, Brad Bradford and Raven. Both guys were doing a grunge gimmick, but Raven's timeless and Bradford is incredibly dated even in 1995.
Right.
But going into the actual match for it, we have The first match on the pre-show was a battle of the most important thing in this world. What day it is? Is it New Day or is it Rusev Day?
And as it turns out, it is a new day. Same
Yes.
old day.
Yes. And actually, it does work on these things because there's always these problems with Rusev Day. Right now, you've got Rusev Day. You've got Lana Day. If you go to their Pro Wrestling Tees ripoff, they also have Aiden English Day. Which one's day is it?
I know, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At least with this one, it was still a weird thing because on the one hand, with Rusev, it's like he's doing well enough for himself, and it's clear they're not burying him. But at the same time, it's like, what else? He should be doing better, but it's like you can't, for the life of you, find out what he could be doing better right now. I mean, he's not that seemingly a good matchup for Nakamura. He's AJ Styles Samoa Joe is already a good one, and even if Joe versus Rusev would be a good match, it's still not ready there yet. They aren't really that good a tag team, but you got to do something with the guy.
Yeah, it seems like putting two random guys in the tag team is more or less their default for someone they don't have. Like, they don't have anything for, but they don't want to do the whole creative has nothing for you thing.
Yeah, but at least with Rusev Day, it seemed like it made sense on it. Where when Rusev had beaten Randy Orton over a year ago, Aiden English had done a thing celebrating that it was Rusev Day, and then Aiden English became Rusev's bard who details all his deeds in song, which is perfectly fair. And suddenly, after a year, they don't feel like a thrown-together tag team. They feel like an actual unit, and that's all you can ask for with a tag team.
So that worked out at least.
Yeah, but that's basically the same with other ones. Like a few years ago, it would seem like Kofi, Big E, and Xavier Woods didn't really click together as a tag team, and now absolutely no one could say they weren't an absolute unit as one thing.
Well, you got to be in awe of the size of that team.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that they are the five-time tag team champions. So that was bound to happen. And if anything, now it's just a question like, yeah, you're the best tag team in the world, but we kind of want to see one of you win the world title.
Yeah, or even any singles title.
Well, even any singles title would be weird because we've seen Kofi as Intercontinental Champion millions of times. We've seen Big E as Intercontinental Champion. It didn't work. And Xavier Woods is good, but I don't know if he's singles title good yet. But yeah, it's basically the time for strap one of these dudes up. Just do it. They need to have Big E or Kofi could absolutely be a world champion right now. That's the biggest, most glaring problem WWE has is there has never been a 100% black WWE champion in their history, and that it has to be fixed. Like right now, just do it immediately just to fix that problem. That is a glaring issue that they have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like even WCW, like basically. And again, I'm bringing up WCW. I know.
Well, it's no problem because WCW, if you don't learn from your history, you're bound to repeat it. And that's an important thing to remember because Lord knows WWE is repeating a lot of bad history. But that goes to this match where New Day and Rusev Day, it could have been more of a comedy match that could have worked with those ones. But it was a solid match. It worked perfectly well, kept things going, so nothing wrong with it. Next up for New Day would be the bar at Super Showdown. Next up for Rusev Day is another Rusev Day. And after that one, a third Rusev Day, or a fourth Rusev Day, or a fifth Rusev Day.
Because really, you gotta make every day Rusev Day.
Yes. Yes, and that goes with the things. It's the Rusev Day in your heart that matters, not the. So it just keeps going. So that let the next one be the next Rusev Day.
They say we're young and we don't know. We won't find out until we grow. Well, I don't know. Well, that's true. Cause you got me.
Oh wait, that's Groundhog Day, not Rusev Day.
Rusev Day!
Yes. But going back to the next one, we have the first match, and it's a Hell in a Cell match. And it's Randy Orton versus Jeff Hardy. And for most of this time, we had Jeff Hardy saying he's going to do something insane in the cell. He's going to do something insane in the cell. He's probably going to kill himself in the cell. For God's sake, Jeff, don't kill yourself in the cell. And people were excited for this match. But this goes to the simple wrestling psychology 101 lesson of the day, folks. Less can be more. On Jeff Hardy's vaunted big spot in this match, he climbs a ladder, grabs to the cell. He swings from the cell cover, then he drops through a table, gets covered, and he's taken out by paramedics for his fall. It was dangerous. It was stupid. It was a daredevil move. And yet somehow Randy Orton's spot looked more brutal in this match just by grabbing a screwdriver, putting it inside Jeff's ear gauge and twisting the ear on it and keep twisting it as and that was far more brutal than that spot Jeff did.
To think that Mick Foley wasn't coming on until later that night.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really the big problem on it, because if you can do something that seems brutal but isn't particularly brutal, it's actually far better than if you actually do something that's super dangerous. We know wrestling isn't safe, so why make it more unsafe than it has to be?
Yeah, it actually sort of reminds me of like the classic like something like Abdul the Butcher or some other random wrestler who would some random wrestler carrying around like a object.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, that was the case where why use a fork when you can use your thumb tied up in some tape or a loaded cast or something that won't really hurt anybody but looks like it'll hurt. Because again, that's one of the problems. Fuck strong style. Fuck it so hard, so bad, and wicked bad. Because wrestling's not supposed to hurt you. It's supposed to look like it hurts.
I'm sure we're probably getting a lot of views of angry people in the comments.
Don't worry about it, because at the very least on it, there might be the angry New Japan fans who can't handle anything about their New Japan being seen. You worship a guy who doxed an abuse shelter, you fuckheads. But that goes to the first match, and it was a cell match. And that's one of the weird things where Orton versus Jeff deserved to be in the cell, but it's also kind of was a little too small to be in the cell, but it worked as for what it was. It just, you could do more damage just being less dangerous than you could without it. So that was basically the problem there.
Am I the only one who thinks it's kind of weird that they had the cell in the first proper match of the pay-per-view?
I don't think it's that big of a problem because usually for the last few years they have put the first match inside the cell, so it's not particularly weird, at least.
I mean, having the first and last one could make an interesting bookend to it, but I just feel like in the spirit of the cell being one of those big capstone matches, you know?
Well, it also helps on this one where you kind of want to have the match where you don't use if you use too many cell matches at once, if you have the spot where someone breaks into the cell, you're basically screwed after that one. So
yeah, you definitely want to save that one for the end.
Yeah. And that's not a spoiler, people. Or is it? So they go through this match, and then they follow the hottest match feud they have right now with fans by going second on the pay-per-view as Becky Lynch takes on Charlotte Flair. And there were some more problems beforehand that angered up the blood as people thought that they were taking signs saying, "I boo the woo," giving more examples of the WWE not listening to the fans for their problem. Then it came out they were actually handing them out before the match, and everybody who complained looked stupid.
Just goes to show you there's no pleasing smarks.
Exactly. Smarks are always a problem. And now that women's wrestling is gone, there's even more of it because you've got the mixture of smark plus white knight plus all the other problems on it. And this match was basically a solid matchup. It had a pretty abrupt ending, but no one cares about this match because the end result of this match was WWE 2 fans, you're welcome. And that's really the big problem on it, where you have a pretty solid but unspectacular match that ended kind of abruptly, but because your favorite wrestler and the pretty girl in the steampunk stuff gets to dance around with a pretty title belt, no one's going to care about that. Because you're marks. Accept that you're marks. You'll be a lot happier when you realize you're a mark.
I believe our next match on the card was Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre versus Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins.
And this was a pretty weird, hard match because this match was incredibly good for it. Like, there's considerations it's going to get 5-star thoughts on it. It had everything on it. Like, this was a very good tag match. If anything, it's just the problem that right now you had the Shield who've been great. Ambrose worked well with the group, and Seth Rollins has been on fire all year. You had Drew McIntyre, who's finally become a tops guy for himself, and you had Dolph Ziggler, who on paper should be revitalized on it, but in practice he's the perfect example of how can we miss you if you won't go away.
Yeah, I'm seeing one review of it. Larry Zonka on 411. I don't think it's that Larry Zonka.
Mm-hmm.
Gave it 4.5 stars and said it was the best main roster WWE pay-per-view match of 2018.
Yeah, and I could absolutely buy it because this one, even with it, Ziggler versus Rollins at Extreme Rules was a very good match if the Pittsburgh crowd weren't absolute fuckheads during that match and decided they'd rather show they can count backwards from 10 than take notice of one of the best matches of the year. So there's no doubt it wouldn't be a great pay-per-view match right there. Meanwhile, on the just kept with the same thing where, again, it just seems like it could be so much better than it was, but it was absolutely worth the price of admission right there.
Then we come to the quest to make AJ Styles a better father.
Yes.
Samoa Joe.
And somehow that's really the benefit. Wouldn't it be easier if he realized he's just doing it to be a better friend to him? As well as the fact that you have AJ Styles against the big fat dude who thinks he has a chance, who's complaining about not getting his girl or his wife. But seriously, it would work a lot better if they just used that one where all they'd have to do to say this one was, you already used Dixie Carter there. Just simply go right out and say, the Claire Lynch thing, nope, Dixie and Styles are absolutely having an affair. You won't have the problem because TNA can't end that spot anyway, and it adds more heat to the feud.
And it looks like they also set up a rematch with a controversial finish.
Yeah, they had a good Samoa Joe had Styles in the Coquina clutch, and then Styles had basically gotten his shoulders above Joe's when they got the 3. So it was perfectly straightforward there. It made sense. So it's for the best because eventually there's only so many times that a guy can beat down the person saying this before you can say, why are you still fighting me again? Especially when this is an example of this match would not work if you just had one person being sane for it. It's like in so many movies you have, if these two people just had a cell phone, this whole conflict would have been over immediately. Literally. If right before SummerSlam, AJ Styles had said, did you send a message to Joe, honey? And his wife said, no, I didn't. Boom. Conflict's over. Joe's an idiot. The whole thing's ended. But somehow AJ Styles does not do that.
Next up, we have a mixed tag match between Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella versus The Miz and Maurice.
Yep, and this was actually, well, it was what it was. I mean, this is the big thing with this match is they're clearly going to build up to Bryan versus Miz, so for Bryan to finally get his payback at WrestleMania. And this just seems like it's going for it. And that seems like the right thing to do, but part of me is not sure if the fans in this day and age have a long enough attention span to work with a Raven versus Dreamer feud where one guy always gets the upper hand on the other guy and the other guy just can't quite put him away. And that's a big worry in this era of wrestling because that was all the great ECW feuds. Raven Dreamer, RVD, Jerry Lynn. It all boiled down to one guy always had the upper hand and the other guy just quite couldn't get him.
You sort of get the feeling that if they tried that feud, like a feud like that in modern WWE, they'd have it like they'd blow it off pretty much within the second pay-per-view. Like with when they tried bringing back the NWO, they just completely they ruined the surprise, first of all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was also a case where with the NWO, it was weird because there were so many times in the WWF versus WCW purchase that they could have had so much surprise, but they just blew it off. The NWO, Eric Bischoff signing, Goldberg being shown up on WrestleMania and then showing up the next night. Things where you could have had people excited and then they just meh.
Yeah, part of me sort of wonders whether they wound up doing that out of like some sort of petty spite. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, also it was basically the fact that in retrospect there wasn't that much you could do for them because most of WCW had the Time Warner deals and didn't want to do it. WCW was a broken thing where they had to just, okay, we're going to get 24 of your prospects. We're going to do some things with them. We'll take some of the top stars, but there's not a lot we can salvage here. And that was
what went. Oh,
you can go
on.
Yeah, I talk too much on the show anyway, so.
Okay, and that was again what went wrong with the Invasion. Like they didn't have a lot of the top guys. They didn't have Flair. They didn't have Sting. They didn't have Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, towards the end, WCW didn't have Hogan. So
yeah,
really, anyway.
Yeah. Plus, at the same time, some of those things would have been a better thing on it. Where if you really wanted to, you could have had the NWO work with or the Invasion work with who they got. They got the world champion Booker T, and Booker T was good. They had the US champ, also Booker T. They had the tag champions in Palumbo and O'Hare. They had the cruiserweight champion in Gregory Helms or Billy Kidman right afterwards. They had a woman to build around in Stacy Keibler. They had some top rising stars like Lance Storm, who seemed like a white-hot prospect in WCW 2000. And they had some people who were getting booked as stars like Hugh Morris, who could have been something. They had the talent there to do something there. They just didn't choose to use it that way.
Of course, Hugh Morris had his own problems on account of his being an abusive prick.
Yeah, but at the very least, it's not. That's years into the future. But
right.
At the same time, you could have used them well and not had a problem with it. It's not like they were just getting a bunch of jobbers there. They did, but they could have made them look like a threat. And that's really the difference on it, where that's probably a big reason Rob Van Dam was so big in 2001, that the ECW side of it, they had all people who came from WWF or WWF, people like Storm or Mike Awesome, who were treated as big threats in the alliance beforehand, and guys like Tommy Dreamer and Rob Van Dam, who were sold as huge deals in ECW. And suddenly the ECW guys looked better. Funny how that happens.
You do sort of have to wonder how well it would have gone if they'd actually had that WCW trial match between Booker T and Buff Bagwell in a more sympathetic territory.
More sympathetic nothing. The next week it was going to be in Atlanta. That was one of the biggest, what the hell did you pull there? Of course, you also have the fact that Buff Bagwell was the perfect example of, he seemed like he was tailor-made for WWE, and then he just blew it. Like, that was just weird on that one, where even before this one, He wasn't terrible in the ring. He had charisma. He had a look. There's on paper, Bagwell should have been a huge star for the WWE, but it just didn't click.
Then we have, I think we of course have Ronda Rousey defending the title against Alexa Bliss.
And this was actually one of those cases where perfect sense for it, because again, their final Ronda Rousey's the type of person you need to book as a star. And it just works weird where they have to do it for these ones, because for some reason, Ronda Rousey is a contradiction. She's very good in the ring. It's pretty clear with how good her performance has been. She's for real, people. She's not like some smoke and mirrors job or just those ones. She's genuinely good. But it just seems like, despite that, if you put her up against people who put on a good match with Rousey, who fit her style and things like that, there's no value in that match, because people think that, oh, well, this will be a good match, but whatever, Rousey's winning. I mean, shit, it's Ronda Rousey. Of course she's going to win. But somehow, when WWE puts Rousey against people like Alexa Bliss, like Stephanie McMahon, allegedly like Nikki Bella, those matches suddenly be good. And it's not because they fit the style, but rather because the WWE fan base trusts WWE so little that they instantly think when they hear Rousey's fighting Alexa or Stephanie or them, WWE is absolutely dumb enough to waste the rub of beating Ronda Rousey on her. And that is weird for it. Ronda Rousey is the best example of the modern day malaise of WWE. It's better to use her against lesser opponents and let the fans think WWE is dumb enough to give them the win than it would be to put her against great opponents who put on great matches with her. That is fucked up. Your thoughts?
I didn't really have any. I didn't really see, like, I didn't see the pay-per-view, and I haven't really seen, I think this week's Raw was the first one I'd seen in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, that's usually one of the pluses where we're going to have to start making some pay-per-view watch-alongs or stuff like that to help get stuff for these ones. So
yeah, I might actually have to get a network subscription at this rate.
Yep. And remember, for the network, you get a 0% discount on if you use the code. Ain't nobody using us as a sponsor yet, because Whacked Out Wrestling's too new for that. So. But that goes to the main event where you have Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman cashing in Money in the Bank. And honestly, the big weakness on this was that Strowman they admitted he cashed it in, because it just seemed like the end game would be that Baron Corbin said, nope, I have the briefcase, so I'm cashing it in now. Possession's 9/10 of the law, and I'm the other 10, so I say it goes, so screw you. But they went with the normal match for Hell in a Cell. And
at least as normal as the Hell in a Cell match can be.
Yeah. But it basically had the problems in. This is where the heel turn failed, because ideally, if you needed Hell in a Cell, it would have been straightforward. I'll cash in immediately and give you time in advance, but you've got to make sure that the Shield can't interfere. But that would require telling fans not to like something, so they went with the way it is now. And so they go with, well, it's Strowman and Reigns in Hell in a Cell, so it can't be that bad. until the end. Brock Lesnar shows up for no reason, just to beat things down. Why? Did you need him for Australia or Saudi Arabia that badly? It's over. It's done with. We don't want another thing on this one. This is the example of WWE doing the Wilt Chamberlain paradox. If you have Wilt Chamberlain who can put 50% of his field goal percentage, by logic, you should have him shoot every time he has it. He's going to make 50%. And by logic, you should have no one else wrestle. There's no one else shoot the ball at all except Chamberlain. You're going to get 50% field goal percentage. Why do it?
Because if you do that, then, of course, the other team will realize that you're doing that, and they'll basically crowd him, and he won't get 50%.
Exactly. It's one of those things where it seems like it makes perfect sense on paper, but in practice, anyone can tell you it is absolutely stupid. And this is basically the problem. Right now, WWE has two of the only three people in the world who can get you 1 million pay-per-view buys, Rousey and Lesnar. And given how he fell apart in UFC with that appearance, it's likely they'll get Conor McGregor in 2019. So they have these people, but they think, well, they'll give us 1 million views anyway. Just go with them. And it doesn't work because there's nothing special about them anymore. You have to do something to make us want to see it other than just their name.
Yeah, it's not like they haven't done anything special with Brock Lesnar in the past. I mean, there was his first year in WWE. There was the fact that he broke the streak.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the problems because even when they do stuff special with him, it's also a problem because the Suplex City gimmick ruined Brock Lesnar. Because now Brock Lesnar doesn't even have to try in the ring. Even if you didn't like Lesnar before that, you knew he was a damn good wrestler. But now with Suplex City, all people care about is he throws suplexes over and over again, so he doesn't even have to give a shit anymore. Just show up, suplex, 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 eat, sleep, suplex, repeat, and go with it.
So now he's basically taking Scott Steiner's gimmick from WWE.
Exactly. And that also works because the USADA can tell you he's taking Scott Steiner's gimmick. But yeah, this was one of those cases where the show had too many problems where it was a good show, but it seems like they're serving too many masters right now. They're trying to set up for the show in Australia, and they're trying to set up for Evolution, and they're trying to set up for Hell in a Cell, and they're trying to set up for probably for the Saudi Arabia show in November. But they can't exactly say one thing for it because they've got to have matches for each of them and can't go with them. Like even the one happy moment for fans on this show where Becky wins the title, you knew something was going to happen because Becky and Charlotte are fighting in Australia, and that was announced weeks ago. So you knew that they were both going to fight again, and they'll probably fight again at Evolution. So yeah, this was Hell in a Cell. So hopefully we can get through, and we'll be a full family again for next week. Until then, I'm Thomas S.K. Green. With me is John Roach, and we'll see you later.
See you later.